Yeah, but being thrust into, I guess you could say, into MTV in front of the camera, it was a lot. So when that happened was I was about, I would say, 19 years old, and I had like this transition in my life when I was a kid. I was like, man, I want to be on TV. Then I got on vitiligo, and I'm like, nah, I don't like being in front of the camera. And then around this time in my life, I'm like, I'm in college. I'm a part of Christian ministries in college, and I'm just chilling. And so the way that it happened was is that I had took a selfie of myself, and this is like at this point in the time, my vitiligo is fully evident. It's all over my face, almost to what it is today. So I took a selfie. Boom, I took it, and then I went off to school. I just threw my phone in my pocket, and I went off to school. And somebody had actually asked me to come to school in my Christian ministry and share my testimony. And usually when I had shared my testimony, I never brought up my skin. I would talk about other stuff. But this time I was like, you know what? I'm going to deliberately talk about my skin. I'm going to make sure that I have something in about my vitiligo. And I did that. I talked about it. And then I went to school that day, did my testimony. When I came back home, my phone was just buzzing. And I looked at my Instagram. I'm like, yo, somebody hacked into my Instagram. But what had actually happened was that this famous albino model had reposted me on his Instagram, and he tagged "In My Skin I Win." And it was Sean Rose. And he had reposted me. And from that moment, photographers started to hit me up and, wanted to do photography with me. So eventually I went out to Brooklyn. I did a shoot. I did 2 shoots in one day. And I remember there's one photo that I had taken. And I'm like, man, I hope he never posts this photo because I'm like, yo, it's the one photo that I didn't want for him to take to post. And he posted it and it went crazy. So I'm in Brooklyn, right? It's cold as heck outside. And one, like, you don't know from Instagram who these people are.
Yep.
So when I met this guy, no disrespect, but he looked nothing like what he looked like on Instagram. Like, you feel me? I'm like, hold up, this ain't adding up, bro. I'm like, hold up. He had a French accent, and I'm like, bro, what did I get myself into? I'm like, thank God I want somebody with me because I don't know. And then he had asked me, like, when we were texting, he was like, where do you want to do the shoot at? I asked him, I was like, where do you want to do the shoot at? He was like, possibly in my bedroom. I'm like, what? I'm like, I said I'm a Christian, but I had to say hell no.
Yep.
I was like, hell no, I don't do that. I'm sorry, excuse my language. But anyway, so I did this shoot with him, and he had me put this white T-shirt on in a dead winter in Brooklyn, where everybody's saying that you got crackheads saying, oh, who's this and who's this guy? Let me get a picture. I'm like, oh man, like let's get this rolling.
Yep.
So he was like, you sit down on the curb. So I'm like, all right, cool. I sit down on the curb. And then he came and he slung his camera to his back. And then he was like, your head on the fire hydrant. I'm like, why you want my head on a fire hydrant? So he leaned me over. He was like, your head on a fire hydrant. He was like, oh, beautiful. And I'm like, I love your skin. And I'm like, okay. He's like, now look angry. I'm like, okay. All right. So I give him an angry face. I'm like, that's easy because I'm pretty upset at this time. It's cold out. So he took the picture. I'm like, and I looked at my boys. I'm like, yo, does this look cool? And they're like, yeah, look all right. So I took the picture, and I'm like, all right, he's not gonna post it. Man, once I got on the train to go back home, he had posted the pictures already. He had posted this picture. I'm like, man, he posted that picture. Lo and behold, they went and made this big meme out of this picture, and I was loving it, man. I thought it was funny. I forgot what people had said. They was like, when your credit score started to go up, it went from like black to white. Bro, I thought it was hilarious. When somebody hit me with the meme, they was like, yo, what you think? And I was like, yo, I think this is hilarious. And they were like, why do you think it's hilarious? They're like, talking about your skin. I'm like, if it's funny, it's funny. And so meme just like made me even more popular on social media. And from that point, eventually throughout the years, like 2 years later, MTV ended up catching a hold of me as I started booking more modeling gigs, as my photos started to get on Instagram and Twitter. And MTV hit me up. And they want to do a documentary about my skin and how vitiligo has affected me. And so